Today I'm sharing chapter 2 of my journals with you. It's the second one that I completed, and I realized as I was working that I didn't want to just keep my journals for travel. I wanted to document it anytime I felt like I wanted to paint and there was an event or something in my life that I wanted to record. So once I decided that journaling is anytime it suits my fancy, then it's a lot easier than trying to keep one for travel and one for home. But you're going to figure out what works best for you and do whatever works for you, because as long as you're creating, that's the purpose, and that's what keeps us sane, at least me. And I hope you find some ideas as you see how I express and draw things and paint things in my life, and maybe you can find things you relate to. Please let me know if this is helpful. If you want me to show something in particular, leave it in the comments, and I'll try to do that in the future. Thank you. Have a great day, and I will see you next week. Chapter 2, Art Journal. Please handle with clean hands. This particular journal is about 3.5 by 3.5 inches. Field Artist is the brand, and I just love this size for traveling because it's small. I started this one primarily to experiment with a new set of watercolors I just gotten. There was an ad in a watercolor magazine for the 9-color Mission Gold. It was offered for $20 to try, and it gave the address, and I sent them a $20 bill and my email and phone number, and got information here at weberart.com. So I wanted to experiment with that watercolor paint and see what I could make. Total Eclipse, 3rd Street Fountain, Macon, Georgia. Just trying different things. Went to Jekyll Island. Had to go to the Turtle Museum down there. That's a hospital museum. And see all sorts of things. Stars Mill. And beautiful flowers at Wild Acres Retreat. Just different things that I wanted to remember. Some that I wanted to forget. I had some knee trouble. And that was a picture of my x-ray. And Hurricane Harvey was barreling down in Texas, and so many of my family lives in Texas. And this is what was happening, and this was my wish for them. Blue skies. I was on a art retreat with a friend, and she brought her sweet dog Rex, and I just had to paint that. This was a beautiful tomato that we ate. We participated in a plein air art event and paint out, and those were wasps under an overpass. Just random stuff that you see, things at a farmer's market. Irma, the hurricane, was approaching, and as I was traveling down to Perry, all of Florida looked like was evacuating. So Irma is coming, Florida evacuates. And this was in memory of 9/11 and for all we have lost since then. Believe it or not, in Juliet, Georgia, this is across the street from the police department. It's kind of funny. Home of fried green tomatoes. The cafe is in Juliet, and I painted that. If you haven't seen the movie, it's pretty good. Just on the front porch waiting for some things to in the future. I love to have a cup of tea on Ladies' Day, and then I went to West Point, Virginia again with a friend. And these are some of the scenes from there. Sometimes I draw things ahead of time. Sometimes I just, the paint is what I begin with, and then I come back and add a little bit of detail with a tiny, tiny pen. So, and then if I did it in pencil, then I can erase the pencil afterwards. So these are just some from there. Then I was on a hike with my husband in the Great Smoky Mountains. Mount Camerer is where we had gone, and this one had 3,500 feet elevation gain. That was a tough hike. And so I was sitting there painting a little bit of the view, catching my breath before we went down from the top. Here's another thing. As I was so tired from yesterday, autumn is the second spring where every leaf is a flower. I love that quote. Well, data from yesterday, 32,000 steps, 329 floors, 14.53 miles, etc. I think you can read the rest. But again, I was tired, wasn't paying attention when I picked up my journal, and I put the entry in upside down. This was one of the views from that hike, and I love to include quotes that I like. May you walk through the world and know its beauty all the days of your life. Apache blessing. This was the scene that we had on our hike the day before, and I was just getting around to painting it. So just love, love, love to capture things from our trip. One of the things that that you can see in this particular picture is the fact that yellow disappears in distance. And so it's one of the first colors to disappear. So even though you know those trees and those mountains back there are green if you were close enough, because green and yellow, blue and yellow make green. If you take away the yellow, you're left with more blue. So keep that in mind when you're painting distance. And the distance gets lighter and duller and less in focus, less contrast. So anyway, here's your art lesson. We always celebrate when we have a big hike, and one of our favorite places to go is a place in Townsend that has these delicious hot fudge sundaes. This is my cat Riley. After we returned, she loves to look out the screen door. Then I went up to the Highlands, North Carolina, and visited a friend. We travel not to escape life, but for life not to escape us. I think that was in another journal, but I like it. I was also doing a Strata daily challenge, and sometimes I was on away from home and doing things remotely. So that's when I filled in a couple of the days of that month with a watercolor journal entry. As long as you were drawing or painting, you could complete it in any medium, and then you have to post it by that day and tag yourself. So different criteria. Lynn put in, my husband and I like to hike there, and this was just a view of the lamp and the trees out the window. I think I was back in Hilton Head for that one. Back in Texas, more stained glass guitars that my brother made, and I painted a large poppy field painting for my mom's living room, and she has a red wall and the Texas flag, of course, blue bonnets, longhorns. I was waiting for my plane and had to get some iced coffee. There's a view out the window. I painted it on the plane, and I actually painted this one from a kayak. So you never know when you'll get out the paints. Pearson Farms, delicious peaches. Again, my cat Riley, she likes to sleep in a wooden bowl. Don't know why, but makes her happy. Watercolors don't have to be a lot of detail. This was wet on wet, and as it was drying, then I did the leaves, but it was still wet enough to blur. Just a hint of the bouquet that I had in front of me. And I just painted my current reading books stacked on top of each other. This was one of my first trips to Wild Acres. Might have been my first trip to Wild Acres in July. This was a particular verse that went with the story of how Wild Acres began. And these are some scenes from that area. This is Table Rock Mountain, the view from the back of the auditorium. Right now it's so overgrown you can't see that for sunrise. So maybe they'll trim it a little bit so we can see it. There's a sculpture, and then outside the pottery area, I went on a hike near Roaring Fork Falls Trail. It's a beautiful waterfall. And then I was trying to do some of the wildflowers, and I didn't really like how the painting ended up, so I put a quote in front of it to kind of distract from the painting. I'm always doing what I cannot do in order to learn how to do it. So that was not only a reminder of, I kind of messed up there, but another way to distract your viewer from things that might not have ended up the way you wanted them to. This is an example of when you go to a lot of places and you kind of want to show you sort of got lost, but you didn't. Anyway, we took the scenic route, is what I called it, and we said, I think we've been here before many times. Edna was my roommate, and it was so easy to get turned around on the mountain and end up in different directions because this was the first time I had been in that area. So this is a way to show you that we got turned around a few times, but a fun way to indicate that in a whimsical way. There was a wonderful watercolor artist there, Dwight Rose, and I just took a snapshot of some of the paintings he had stacked up in his room and just did a little sketch to designate that. Here's another one. I was just playing around and I didn't like this tree at all. So, to live a creative life, we must lose our fear of being wrong. That is so true. because you learn so much from your mistakes. And if you aren't willing to make them, then you'll never be very creative. Oh, this is one of my favorite paintings of the entire week. Greg Barnes was my instructor for plein air. I was working in pastel or oil. He was outside working with pastel. He had this small umbrella blocking the sun at the time, but before he finished his display, his demo, it started sprinkling, and you don't want your pastels, the dry pastels, to get wet, so he had somebody grab him a large umbrella to protect he and his pastels from getting wet, and he continued the painting. So he's holding up an umbrella with one hand, painting with his other hand, and the second umbrella is attached to his easel. So I just told him he made my journal. So he's one of my journal entries. Here's another morning view of Table Rock Mountain. Again, very loose, and that's some of my favorite type of painting, where it's just suggested. Art offers sanctuary to everyone willing to open their hearts as well as their eyes. Happiness is not a goal. It is a byproduct of a life well lived. So it was the last full day at Wild Acres, and it was just a wonderful time. I had an instructor, Bob Nulf, and Greg Barnes. No, this was my second year to go. The first year I only was there a week. Okay, interesting. I don't think I was journaling the very first year I went. Oh, I'll have to check that out. Just some other things. Sometimes paint a flower and its shadow. And Chihuly glass exhibit at Biltmore. I think part of this was this was at Biltmore. My family went with me on that one. It was great. Yeah. On to my next book. That was 2018. Again, wonderful memories. I hope you can create some. If any of this has been helpful, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. It does help very much. The algorithm. And on to the next book.